Hey, MOMnation. Welcome to Mental Wealth with Laura Wood and Katie Holly Lambert, where we talk through generational trauma so we can leave a new legacy for our children. Counselor Laura is with Benavieri Counseling out of Chandler, Arizona, and you can find her on Facebook, on the web, or by the link in the show notes. We hope you enjoy the show.
Well, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Mental Wealth with the lovely Laura Wood with Benavieri. How are you today?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
I am doing awesome. I'm actually really excited to dive into this topic. I feel like I say that at the onset of every single episode because I'm always really excited to dive into these topics with you. They're good, juicy topics.
I know. I was going to say it's true every time. I'm always excited. It's always something interesting. It never is what we expect. It's great every time.
Totally agree. So today, let's talk about money.
Money.
And let's talk about maybe like our relationship with money, our perception of money. Where did that begin? What are we dragging through life that probably isn't even our luggage? Let's start at the beginning, Laura.
Oh boy. These are good questions. Yeah, I mean, I think our relationship with money is complicated, right? Like we learn these lessons as kids, like about money. I mean, I know sometimes when we grow up with like scarcity, then we sort of start to like feel a lot of fear about money. What does money mean to me about my life, about who I am, right? Like what is like I think everybody has a different um belief system and relationship with money that is far more complicated than we realize. It's not just about um how much do I spend, how much do I earn. It's not. It tells a bigger story about us as a whole, I think.
Totally agree. Throughout my life and perhaps even myself, okay, uh, I have realized that a lot of moms, and I say moms because I'm not excluding dads, but I
Right.
talk to moms more, and so
Right.
that's kind of more of my daily routine. There's a lot of anxiety around it. For
Mm.
instance, I know one mom that can't even look at her bank account, won't do it.
Oh,
Her husband handles everything, and so she has a debit card, she has access to it, but
sure.
as far as reconciling it or looking to make sure she got that refund from Amazon when she made a return or whatever, won't do it, will not do it. Gives her like crippling anxiety.
Yeah, that's interesting. I wonder when I hear that, I think, okay, well, what is the threat, right? What's the fear? Is it that I'm going to find out that, everything is not what it seems,
Mm.
right? Like we want to operate in this world where everything's okay. I don't have to think about it. I can just do the things I need to do. I can buy the things I need to buy. I don't have to worry about a budget or worry about retirement.
Mm.
I can just be fine and not think about it, and it's taken care of.
Mm-hmm. and and I don't know if this piece of information helps. This mom
Hmm.
is not struggling financially.
Sure. I think,
So there isn't that stress behind it.
yeah. The interesting part about that is you would think that not struggling financially would make it easier to look at your bank account.
Right.
But something that comes to mind for me is maybe that in this person's past or whatever this person's perspective is on what money means could be driving her fear that perhaps she's spending too much money. Perhaps there are things that are delayed, or perhaps there are things that are not taken care of. Perhaps there are, maybe she's had an experience where she thought everything was fine financially, but then there was some kind of crisis, right? Something
Mm-hmm.
like that, where like they thought that everything was okay and all of a sudden they lost everything or something like that, right? I think sometimes we avoid things that we don't understand. We avoid things we don't have control over. Um, we avoid things that make us feel a certain way. So how does money make you feel? How does money make you um settle? Like, does it make you anxious? Does it make you feel safe to have a lot of money? Does it, right? Like, there's so many different questions that go into what drives our ability to manage our finances and take control of them, and or not at all, right? Because if we just avoid it, if we never know, it's kind of like never going to the doctor. Like, I'm perfectly healthy, but I refuse to go get a checkup.
Right.
Because what if I look and then it's all not true? What if it's all a lie? Then what do I do? Then who am I?
Right.
So this whole not knowing is like a safety net, but it actually does the opposite. It makes us less in control. It makes us more likely to have some kind of disaster. It makes us less secure in reality. Avoidance is a very bizarre coping skill that we use that is very, very common, but incredibly unhelpful.
So what would you suggest in this? I mean, obviously you don't know this person. I'm sure that there's, there are details that would be very helpful to you to give a full and complete answer, but just what would you suggest to this mom? Maybe something that she can dive into and dig a little bit deeper into to really discover why she's having, because obviously like it's causing anxiety. So that's kind of rough,
Yeah.
And I'm sure it's daily.
I think the biggest thing that we have to do when we're feeling avoidant is we have to evaluate, like, okay, what's the threat? We have to say, okay, what is the true worst case scenario? I like to play the worst case scenario game where I say, oh, I look at it and it turns out I'm negative $4 million. Okay. If that's the worst case scenario, like, then what? What will I do? Well, I would file bankruptcy. I would sell a home. I would sell my car, right? Like, if you really put into tangible, concrete steps, the worst case scenario doesn't seem that bad. Because one, it's not going to be that. It's almost never the worst case scenario. It's usually something fine. But the anxiety is a feeling that we can manage. And the anxiety doesn't indicate an actual emergency. So we have to kind of, it's almost like sizing the problem, right? Like, is this anxiety telling me that it's a real emergency, or is this anxiety just a fear based on something that happened in the past or something that I'm kind of spun myself up into about the future? It really depends on every individual what that anxiety is stemming from. But the solution is always to kind of check in with that anxiety and evaluate, okay, is this a fear or is this a fact? Is this an emergency or is this a feeling? And so taking that step to say, okay, anxiety, what are you afraid of? Write that down. Well, now what? What will you do? Can you handle it? Like, I always think about my worst case scenario, for example, is like becoming homeless, like not having nowhere to sleep, like not being able to have a roof over my kid's head, right? That was always sort of my worst case scenario. And I thought about money from that perspective. Like, when my kids were little and I was newly single parenting, it was a very hard thing. And I was always I was always afraid of just like having nothing and not being able to pay my bills and not being able to do what I needed to do. And so as I've gotten older and and my career has grown and all of these things, my stability has increased. Now, when I get fearful about money or anxious about checking the bank or whatever, I say to myself, okay, well, what's the worst case scenario? I'll become homeless. Like, I won't have enough money to pay my bills, whatever. Okay. Well, what's the reality? Well, if I had $0 right now, but something was due, I could call the company that I owe money to. Like, if it's my mortgage or if it's my credit card or if it's my car, whatever, I could call them and say, like, hey, I'm not going to be able to pay. Can I have an extension? That's a tangible thing that I could do.
Absolutely.
if I had no money right now and, the kids are hungry, do I have enough food in my house to feed them? Yes, I do. We would have to eat, maybe we're going to eat microwave nachos with chips and cheese, or maybe we're going to have macaroni, or maybe we're going to have a tuna sandwich. But can we eat today? Yes. All right, great. I'm not going to become homeless like right now.
Right.
So this anxiety is not indicating an emergency. It's just indicating a fear from the past. So now that I know that, I can say, okay, I can address this, I can face this, and nothing bad will happen to me in this moment right now. Nothing bad is going to happen to me when I open up this tab on my computer and check this account.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really just assessing in this very second, is this a true emergency or not? And what can I do in order to manage whatever information I'm about to find? And then I'm usually going to be able to do that and be kind of calm, or be at least okay enough to do the next thing.
So it's more, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you're grounding, you're like, okay, here's where I'm at. And
Yes.
it's more like making sort of baby steps or chunking it into smaller, okay, so today we're fine. And
Mhm.
you know what I mean? Like instead of, because it's overwhelming to look at the whole thing as a big picture.
Right. Right. That's right. And so I'm checking in on the level of severity of the problem and the impact of the problem and the potential negative consequences, and like which thing is like, it's second to second, right? It's getting really, really present in this moment to know, like, what am I afraid of? What's actually possible? What's actually likely? And then what are my steps forward if I do need to address something that is specific? Because anxiety in and of itself isn't a problem to solve.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a feeling. It's a message. What is it telling me? It's telling me I am afraid. Okay, what is it telling me I'm afraid of? It's telling me I'm afraid of XYZ. Okay, now of that fear, what's actually happening and what's actually possible, and what can I do about it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it actually makes me feel more calm
Oh,
when you
good. Okay,
when
we're
you
doing some
explain it
grounding
like
here
that.
right now. Yeah, absolutely.
So let's oftentimes when we're on the show, we talk about things that have happened in childhood that sort of shape our experience in adulthood, right? So
Mm-hmm.
what kinds of, maybe even some examples of some scenarios or some ways that people, may have been raised or experienced in their family systems back then that might create this anxiety or create, like you said, the lack feeling,
Mm-hmm.
even if they may not truly be lacking.
Mm-hmm. I think that our childhood shapes our entire personality. Life is a traumatic reenactment, right? So all these messages that we see about money from our parents, like, for example, um, do your kid ever say, "Oh, well, I don't want to get that; it's too expensive," or something like that, right? Like, has anybody, right? Like a gift for Christmas, like, "Oh, that's too much. I'm asking for too much." Stuff like that. So it's these messages are kind of like permeating in. We're observing our parents' behavior about money. We're observing our parents' attitudes about money, and we're internalizing those in such a way that is shaping how we think about what is okay to do, what's not okay to do. So that's just like a simple example of like how we learn about this stuff. But if you have parents who are very secretive about money, let's say we don't talk about money, that's bad form, right? That's rude. Don't talk about money.
Don't ask.
Don't ask about money. Don't, like money is just like this dirty word. Like it's not classy. It's not okay to discuss money or financial planning or, wealth or anything like that. Like if it's not a part of our conversation, then we're probably going to be a little bit afraid of it. We're probably going to be a little avoidant of it. We're probably going to have some messages about what it means about me if I want money because I like it, because it helps
Mhm.
me buy cool stuff. I
Right.
like nice things. I want to spend a lot of money, right? Like, what does that say about me? Perhaps there's a message that you got that, like, you don't flaunt your money. You don't, other people, you don't want to show them money. So, like, you don't want to buy flashy cars or you don't want to do this or whatever. But then you like nice things. You want to buy a flashy car. And now are you like, is that bad? Should you feel bad about that? Like, is it not okay for you to have money? Is it not okay for you to, be comfortable when people in your life aren't comfortable? Like, is it this like evil thing that creates power and greed? And, is it something that, that it makes you like, uh, elite or stuffy or you know what I mean? So it's
Yeah.
like that attitude is shaped from a very early age, or maybe it's the other direction and it's like, oh, if they don't have, like, maybe you had
Mm.
messages about other people who don't have a lot of money and like that means something bad about them, right? If the attitude in your house is like, oh, poor people or people without money, or like if we talk bad about people in lower socioeconomic classes, maybe you feel like it's, you know, disgraceful if you don't have a lot of money now,
Mm-hmm.
right? Maybe you're in a field like the helping professions, or maybe you're in a field like, teaching, social work, uh, nonprofit work, whatever. Maybe you're in a field that, you're not getting rich. Am I like not as good as everybody else?
Right.
What does that say about me that I don't have, a big fancy house? But that means maybe I'm not successful. Maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I'm not as driven. Maybe, um, you know, I just work this job and, I didn't start my own business. And you know what I mean? So there's this story that you tell yourself about yourself based on what you learned about what does money really mean for a person? What does money mean about people in general? Um, Sometimes people think people with a lot of money are better than everybody else. Sometimes people think people with a lot of money are not good.
Right. Right.
Um, Other messages could be about selfishness. Like, you don't need that,
Mm.
like it's not good to ask for all of that stuff. Like, you're being greedy, you're being selfish. You can't want that. Like, you can't, you know what I mean? So like, you're not thinking about other people, or, you're not recognizing your privilege. You're not being kind enough, not being caring enough. And so then when you become an adult and you're like, well, I really want to buy this new pots and pans set for my kitchen because I cook a lot and I really love it and it's super pretty, but I shouldn't buy this one because it's more money and I should just get the cheap store brand one. It's fine. Like, I don't need
Mm-hmm.
this. I don't need the
Mm-hmm.
fancy thing. Like, who am I? Who do I think I am? Like, I'm not special. I don't deserve that. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of this projection of what we deserve or what we're worth. Um, and then other times there's financial abuse, right? That's a whole other thing.
Whole other thing. So, maybe one of the parents suffered from that from another parent. And so they're watching.
They're
Newsflash,
watching.
kids are watching.
Yeah, they're watching. So, financial abuse looks like one person handles all the money and the other person has to ask permission to spend money.
Mm-hmm.
That's abuse.
Yeah.
If one partner in a marriage is asking permission to spend money, any money, like at the grocery store or whatever, that's abuse.
Mm-hmm.
Bottom line. Um, if one person is restricting money um based on like another adult's behavior, like, well, you didn't, cook dinner every night this week, so, you're not going to be able to spend your going out money this weekend. I'm not going to give you
Mm.
that. money to go out with your friends. Like that's abusive.
Right.
To say an adult with agency is not allowed to do something or have access to money that is legally theirs.
And that makes a lot of sense to me. And unfortunately, I know that that exists probably more than we
Way
want
more.
to admit.
Mm-hmm.
But I also want to point out that I feel that that's a little bit different than spouse A and spouse B having an agreement between each other saying, hey, if you want to get something and it's over $500 or whatever, like,
Right.
let's have a conversation about it.
Totally.
Kind of thing.
Yeah, because that's a partnered agreement.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's a collaboration. That's not a dictation. That's not saying, well, you don't deserve to have this unless I give you permission to have this. Like essentially you have to earn the money that is legally and rightfully yours. Like that's not okay to do.
Mm-hmm.
Money is complicated, like it can represent freedom. For me, just going back to as this newly single parent, raising my kids on my own, earning money for the very first time. When I was married, I wasn't earning money. I wasn't able to do that. And so with my little kids, working outside of the home wasn't an option for me at that time. So now money to me kind of represents freedom.
Yeah.
Right? Like I can make my own choices. I can save my money. No one else is spending it. Right? I can do whatever I want with my money. Nobody else is telling me what to do. So those things, are empowering, often for women, especially, because most of the parents who stay home raising children, not earning money outside of the home, are women. That's not 100% true, but that's true more of the time than not, right?
Yeah,
And
I
so
agree. Yeah.
it can be very empowering for a woman to earn their own money. And for an abusive partner, that can be very threatening.
Yeah. So you brought up something, you brought up spending.
Mm-hmm.
And I have, again, with my conversations with other moms, throughout life, it's been a decade, Laura, that we've had MOMnation. Can't even
Oh my
believe it.
goodness.
So imagine all of these conversations that I have, right?
Yeah.
Or posts that I see. And so I see sometimes, whether it be the mom herself or her partner or spouse, and they are struggling maybe to pay the mortgage or pay the rent or, pay the grocery bill, like the priority stuff, because they can't help themselves but go out and buy that new purse or go out and buy that new generation iPad or so the money's there, but it's being allotted in different directions than maybe where it should be. Can we talk a little bit about like how could somebody who's I guess the first step would be recognizing that in themselves, right? Once they recognize that or recognize it in their partner, like how can we work out of that into something that's a little bit more positive for their family? Because that's going to be really stressful when you can't make the mortgage every month, but you have all the newest, latest, and greatest electronics kind of thing.
Totally. Yeah, this is hard. It's funny. It's almost, I guess it's similar to like dieting and exercise, right? It's hard to be good all the time.
Yeah.
And it can feel restrictive when we don't have enough fun money, when we don't have enough fun calories. It's not easy to only eat the healthy stuff and never splurge, right?
Right.
So I think here balance is key, but I hear this all the time, like, oh, spend less than you earn. Okay. Right? Like, oh,
Sure.
thanks. That's great.
Yeah, I
Groundbreaking.
never thought of that.
That is groundbreaking, right? It's like, come on. Okay. So why do we spend more than we earn? Why do we spend on things we don't need? Um, one thing that is a major feature of overspending is high stress. So if I'm stressed, I'm going to eat out at the dinner. I'm going to order takeout and I'm not going to cook dinner.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there goes my budget, right? I'm going to buy this thing that I want right now because it will make me feel better.
It's
That's just,
exciting.
it's very nice to have a new thing.
Yeah.
It's takes me out of my rut. It makes me feel excited. It makes me feel, maybe it makes me feel powerful. Maybe it makes me feel special. Maybe I feel like I deserve it, right? Because I deserve it.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be true even if you can't afford it.
Mm-hmm.
And so some of those things are they're just coping mechanisms. It's a way to cope with stress is to buy something. And then we get into, well, I want to buy the nicest thing because I want everyone to see, like, I want to buy the thing that's more expensive because it looks nicer. And, I want my kitchen to be trendy and everybody's going to come over and they're going to see how great I am and they're going to see how perfect my life is. And they're going to see how, right? Like I'm hiding. So it's a
Mm.
mask, right? Buying the latest new things, not always, but it can be a coping mechanism as a mask for a sense of not being good enough, a sense of being, maybe you're comparing yourself to others
Mm.
and judging yourself or feeling judged by others. And so you want to show that you're okay, show that you're doing great. You want to show up in a way that makes people think everything's fine and that nobody will ever wonder or nobody will ever realize how bad you feel on the inside.
Mm.
Right. So we make everything look nice on the outside in order to cover up how badly we feel on the inside. Sometimes it's covering up for others. Sometimes it's covering up for ourselves. Sometimes we think, when I walk by that old refrigerator every day, it makes me feel really like a failure.
Mm.
My old, taupe fridge that is from 1998, that I took with me into my first house from my parents' garage, right? I feel like a failure because I can't afford to buy a new fridge or I don't have, and everybody's going to look at that and they're going to be like, what the heck? Like, what's wrong with you? You know what I mean? So like when I see the thing every day that reminds me of my lack, that reminds me of my not togetherness, that reminds me of my not successfulness, I get upset. And so then I need to cope with that upsetness by either compensating in different ways. I might overspend on other things, or I might finance the refrigerator, even though I can't afford the monthly payments. Like there's nothing wrong with financing. There's a really good argument to be made to finance certain things because money in the bank is not making any more money unless it's
That's
in an
right.
investment, right? Like, so we can talk through the interest rates and the math that makes sense. So there's nothing
Yep.
wrong with financing your fridge. However, if you were talking about why would I do this if I can't afford it? And that's really what's going on the inside is I'm dealing with these emotions and these feelings that I don't know how to cope with. And so I think that if I don't have to look at this every day, I'm going to feel better.
Mm.
I'm going to change the things on the outside. It's kind of like cleaning your house when you're stressed.
A lot
Like
of people do that. Yeah.
who has like a bad day and they look around and their house is a mess and like it makes everything worse and like they feel like they need to clean their house and then they'll feel better.
Mm-hmm.
What we're doing in that is we're trying to control what's on the outside in order to help deal with what's on the inside. But an inside out approach is going to be more effective in the long term, right? So what we really need to be doing in that moment is the same as the anxiety moment in the beginning, which is we need to get really, really present in our moment. So I'm looking at that fridge. It makes me feel like crap. I'm going to say, okay, what's really going on here?
Mm-hmm.
Is this an emergency? Does this fridge really actually mean I'm a failure? Fact or feeling? Well, it's a feeling. It's not a fact. It's not true.
Right.
So am I going to be okay? Can I get through the rest of the day without changing this refrigerator? Is buying this thing, let's say it's not a fridge, let's say it's anything in your cart, right? I have like 20,000 things in my cart. that I never buy, that I just save for later, and it's my window shopping, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I do
So
the same thing.
maybe I'm buying something in my cart. Do I need, so this is how because I like to ask myself when I'm trying to, like, maybe I'm trying to budget, maybe I'm trying to save, maybe I'm whatever, trying to limit my spending. One thing that I do is I'll look at the thing and I'll be like, okay, so if 24 hours goes by and I still don't have this thing, can I still do all the things that I need to do? Or is it like I need batteries for my smoke detector? Like,
Right.
you know what I mean? Like, is this the thing
Is
that
it
I
a
need right?
must?
Is this the thing that I need right now? Or if I wait and I don't buy it until next week, will that be okay too? Okay. So I'm going to get really present in myself right now. Do I have to have this right now? Not do I have to have it? Do I have to have it right now? And then if I can wait, well, then I'll just wait a week. I'll say, you know what? If I still am just dying for this thing on Friday next week, I'm going to go ahead and get it. And then see what happens then. Most of the time, you're going to forget about it.
Yeah.
That most of the time, you're going to forget about it. If you didn't forget about it and you're still like, God, I just am in love with this, then I'm going to say, okay, can I truly afford this? If I spend this money right now, how am I going to feel? Am I going to, like, what is this going to do for me? What value is this item going to bring to my life? Am I going to use it right away? Right? Maybe it's a TikTok video of something super helpful, like a cleaning item or a weird vacuum or a something, I don't know, whatever, right? That's usually my stuff. It's fine. Anyway, am I going to use it right away? Or is it going to sit in the box for a month before I actually open it? Maybe I can buy it next month. Right? Like, so I'm sort of just evaluating in this moment, like, what am I doing? Why am I doing it? Do I need to do it? Could I be okay if I don't do it? And so the information that we need in that moment is I can be okay even if I don't do this thing right now.
I love that. And I feel like the same, like that idea also applies to sales, because I'll hear people say, oh, well, it was on sale. Like I
It's
had
on
to get
sale.
it.
Yeah,
You know,
it's on sale.
I may
What
have
are you
said
talking
that
about?
once or twice.
I mean, you know, it's possible.
So these are kind of the things that we feed ourselves, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it feels good. Feels good to buy a thing. It feels good to wear a new outfit. It feels good to use a new pan in your kitchen. It feels good to, um, cozy up with a new pretty blanket. It feels good to get new couch pillows and refresh your living room, right? Like those things feel good.
Yeah.
And there's nothing bad about them. It's just a matter of what am I coping with? And I am going to use some grounding skills and coping skills to ensure that I am in my most present, most stable capacity when I make the decision to do it.
Right. Because I love that. And I love taking the time and, kind of stepping away from it and saying, hey, do I need this in a week or whatever? Because I feel like there's a second set of anxieties that gets created when we impulse buy, right? And then all of a sudden the Amazon truck pulls up 2 days later, right? Because they're fast. And you're like, ooh, I really couldn't afford that.
Right.
Shoot.
Mm-hmm.
And now there's this whole other set of anxiety happening, maybe a little of personal beating oneself up or something like that, right?
Right. Like, ugh, I always do this. Like, I'm so irresponsible. Like, what is wrong with me? Like,
like I'm
I'm
never going to get out
ashamed.
of this
Right.
cycle.
Right. Right. And so the answer to all of this is really just, and the same answer is true for dieting, is getting really, really present. Do I really need this whole cake right now? Or can I be really, really present and notice this cake and enjoy this cake and be okay with only eating one piece of cake? Right? We have to recognize what our actions are coping with. Because that's pretty much all the time when we're doing things, we're coping with distress. Right. If we're doing something that we regret later, it's because we're coping with distress. Like,
right.
We don't just do things that we wish we didn't do because we're like idiots. We're not idiots.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, we know we're not just like we don't just have like no self-control. We're coping. We're not grounded.
Mm-hmm.
And so most of us are far less grounded than we realize. And when we actually take the time to get present and use these grounding skills and like take a moment to be like, oh, I'm right here right now. Like this is what's happening. I'm enjoying this cake. I'm thinking about buying this pots and pans, but I'm going to use my current pots and pans for another week until I decide. Like I'm in this moment. I'm connected with myself. I'm connected with my environment, and I can make a sound decision that I can be proud of, right? Because distress coping is solving an immediate need to eliminate distress. Decision making is possible to align with your long-term goals. Distress coping does not align with long-term goals because its goal is to eliminate distress immediately. The end.
Mm-hmm.
Fuck the consequences.
Right.
I'll deal with those later. Right? So when we slow down and make some intentional decisions, then we can feel proud of our choices, and we can still enjoy the things that we enjoy. This is not about restriction. It's about intention.
Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense. So that's the spending part of my question. So it was two-part. You just didn't know that. So the second part is the saving part.
Yeah.
Because again, I'll see posts, I'll talk to people, and they really struggle to save. It's almost like if it's in my bank account, it's burning a hole in my bank account, and I got to find something to spend it on. And that isn't always, the best approach in most cases. And
Right.
people find themselves kind of, they dig themselves in a bit of a financial hole.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of like, what if something catastrophic were to happen, or you couldn't work for XYZ amount of time, or on a more positive note, what if a really great opportunity comes up and you want to take it, but you can't take it because the funds aren't there? That kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think saving has an extra layer of challenge because it also comes with fear of the future, and saving money indicates that I'm putting money away for the future that I'm planning for. And if I haven't saved yet and I start saving and I'm only have $100 and I'm supposed to retire in 20 years and I'm not going to get anywhere, and it's overwhelming, and now I feel like I'm spiraling, right?
Yeah.
So when you pair that with the possible fear of like I'm not prepared for retirement, like that can get I'm avoiding the whole thing. I don't want to deal with it. So one very helpful thing, I'm not a financial planner, but one very helpful thing is to create a completely separate bank account, possibly even at a completely separate bank, and automatically send a certain amount of money into that account every week or every month. Maybe it's $50, maybe it's $10, maybe it's $5,000. I don't know what your budget is, right?
Right.
But just have that go, and then don't download the app. Just
let it roll.
Put it somewhere so that you don't see it, and you don't have to think about it, and it just sort of like builds itself up and gives you that like emergency fund, right? There are real life circumstances where emergencies come faster than savings. So, I can't necessarily like de-stress the life that we live because life is stressful. But if we have the opportunity to save, if it's possible for you to save $10 a week, save $10 a week. That's enough right now, right? And so when you start to get used to that, then you can get excited about it, because in a year, when you check your account and you're like, oh, well, I have several $100s, or I have this, like, that's kind of fun.
Yeah.
Then maybe I can get excited about it and building confidence, right, with my success. And so it's just about starting something, sticking to it, using that same present mindfulness when you're like, well, I could buy this thing though instead, or whatever. It's like, okay, again, go through the steps. Like, do I need this right this second? Like, what's going on? What am I coping with? All of that. And would I rather have $10 in my savings or this you know, gadget from TikTok or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I think the most important thing here is emotional stability and evaluating, is your feeling a fact? Is this true that I have to have this? What will this bring to my life? Like being really stable in your grounding skills. And then you'll have more capacity to make good choices. That's not to say that you're never going to be like, I still want this and I'm going to buy it anyway.
Right, right.
You just can do that without the shame and blame. And you can do it minimally enough to where it doesn't totally tank your accounts. You know what I mean?
I love, and if you've ever said it before in one of our episodes or in our many conversations, I didn't pick up on it and I apologize, but I love factor feeling. I
Cool.
may very well use that uh forever because I feel like that's a really great, I mean, it sounds so basic, but it's so not. And
Yeah.
it's so helpful to be able to differentiate between, hey, is this me or is this like a true thing?
Mm-hmm.
Not saying that your feelings aren't true and that kind of thing, but you know what I'm
Right.
saying? Like, is this my perception of it or is this the truth of it?
Mm-hmm.
And I love that. So stealing.
All yours. I'm pretty sure I
Thanks.
didn't make it up.
It was awesome though. Anything else come to mind? Maybe conversations that you have with your clients or anything about the whole topic of money and anxiety around money that we haven't dove into?
Yeah, and this doesn't just apply with money, but I think about just making things mean stuff. We often we apply a lot of meaning to different things that don't have the objective meaning that we feel it does. So, like, for example, having a lot of money means something about me, good or bad or whatever. I encourage everyone to come from a neutral place where we can say, this isn't good, this isn't bad, this just is.
Yeah.
And it doesn't actually mean anything about me. So, most of the time that we're dealing with distress, we're having a narrative that's saying something about us in our head, right? Like something like this says about me. What does this say about me? Like, this says that I'm successful. This says that I'm not successful. This says that I'm a good parent. This says that I'm a bad parent. This says that I'm, responsible. This says that I'm not responsible, right? Like, what is this saying about me? And to apply a level of neutrality to it that says, this is just a thing that exists that I can do or not do. And I am who I am no matter what.
Yeah.
I am me, and that is enough. And I can reassess and decide on my own what this means to me, not what my already created narrative or presumption or assumption or lessons learned from wherever. I can change what things mean when I have enough capacity to face them and to evaluate like what's really going on and what are my values? What do I think this means? And so I would encourage people to sort of start from just, it's not good, it's not bad, it just is.
It says, yeah.
And then we just go from there.
Yeah. I love that. And again, it's very calming. What a very calming conversation we're having. For me anyway. I don't know. And some of these anxieties that we've discussed or some of these things I share in and some I don't.
Yeah.
But just your ability to put it into easy to understand words and really simplify something that is kind of complex, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I really appreciate that. And I know that our audience does too. So thank you for always being that amazing person and resource that you are.
Oh, thank you. I love it. I can never presume to say that these ideas will solve all of the world's problems. and especially when we talk about money, I remember being um, really struggling, and where there wasn't, I couldn't, I couldn't afford the things that we needed. And that's okay right now. That doesn't always have to stay true. Right. And so if right now saving isn't a thing that is possible for you, then okay. Right. If right now you are working towards something different, like, okay, that doesn't mean anything about you.
Right. Right. And I think we're probably the quickest to judge ourselves, right?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, for sure.
And I feel like we sometimes judge ourselves using other people's glasses, probably most of the time,
Mm-hmm.
rather than our own.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah, for
I
sure.
think most especially around this subject,
Mm-hmm.
especially depending on how you were raised, on what you experienced. Um,
Mm-hmm.
you know, just thinking back to high school or even earlier. And, it's really sad. I have shared this before. I come from a really small town,
Mm-hmm.
like uber small, like this size of my neighborhood now, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately there were some kids that weren't as well off as others and really, really took the brunt of that,
Mm-hmm.
just in terms of kids being really mean. And,
Yeah.
some of these kids I actually now fast forward, 30 years or whatever, I'm still friends with,
Mm-hmm.
and they've really done some incredible things in their life. And
Yeah.
it makes me, it warms my heart because I'm like, gosh, I know that. So not only did they struggle at home, most likely, some of these kids I'm thinking of, didn't even have food. Like they
Right.
came to school to eat, you know what I mean? And so
Mm-hmm.
not only did they have that at home, but now they're having the struggle of being in their first experience of society, right? Which is school. And now they're getting beat up about, physically and emotionally and
Mm-hmm.
mentally beat up for it too. And it's just like, oh, it's so sad. It's so sad to me. Um,
Yeah.
and and this is, a gazillion years ago that I was in school, right? So like the late 80s,
Mm-hmm.
early 90s, where it was, there were no rules. Um, and I hope that things are getting better. I talk with my 10-year-old and, I don't like deliberately ask him what's going on at school or anything, but I know that in his class and in his school, like bullying's not a thing.
Mm-hmm.
They're really against bullying, I guess. And so all the kids, like, as far as I know, there isn't that
Mm-hmm.
sort of mental, emotional, and physical beating up on others that have less than others do, or than some do. And I'm thankful for that. And I'm glad
Mm-hmm.
that that's not something that he's experiencing, even watching, you know?
Yeah.
I just feel
Yeah,
for those
for
kids.
sure. It's hard. As adults, like there's a lot of shame associated with not having as much or struggling financially. There's so much shame, right? The projection is often, that you're not trying hard or you're not working hard enough or you're irresponsible. And it's just like these messages are bullshit,
Yeah. Yeah,
frankly.
they are.
And I want us all to have the freedom to say, no, that's not true. And it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks or is projecting towards me, because it doesn't actually mean that. It doesn't, this is what it is. And it's not good or bad. It just is. And
Mhm.
I'm doing what I'm trying to do. And I have goals and I have values. And I'm capable of navigating that. And that is okay enough.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
And I hope all of you out there got as much value as I did, as much calm as I did out of this conversation. Because again, I mean, I love how you take very complex things and make them simple to understand. So I really do appreciate that about you, Laura. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. This was really fun. I can't believe how fast it went by too.
I know, always. What the heck? So next month, we will be here again. We will have another amazing topic for you guys. If you want to check out any of our previous episodes, this has been like over 2 years now we've been at this. So
Yes.
we've got a lot of good stuff in our library. Hop on over to our YouTube channel. It is at MOMnation USA. Scroll down just a little bit until you see the mental wealth playlist. And that is all of our previous episodes. Or on our podcast channel, it is not at. This is that's our handle. So sorry. Our handle on all social media is at MOMnation USA. Our podcast is MOMnation Talk Radio, and that's where you can connect with us.
Love it.
All right. Usually I'm a little bit better with that spiel, but
you did great. Nailed it.
Thanks. All right, guys. We'll see you.
All right. Bye.
Bye.